Welcome. It's time for another FineScale Modeler Weekly, and our first kit is a subject that needs little introduction.
But it has been highly anticipated. From Kotare, we have a 1/32 scale Spitfire Mk.Ia.
Arguably one of the prettiest fighters ever built, at least I think so. The Spitfire was a mainstay of the Allied war effort through most of World War II.
This kit represents one of the early versions used in 1940 over France and Belgium in the Battle of Britain.
While Kotare may be a new name, many of the people behind it worked for Wingnut Wings, a heritage that's clear in the packaging, instructions, and parts, as we'll see.
Surface detail on the fuselage combines shallow recessed rivets up front and petite raised rivets on the rear. Some of the panel lines are represented as lap joins rather than simple recesses. There's no engine, but the cowl builds from separate side, top, and chin panels that break on natural panel lines. The Zeus fasteners are well molded. A nice touch is the separate spine that preserves the line of rivets along the top. It also joins on a panel line.
The wings show subtle unevenness across the panels, and the ammo and inspection panels are slightly raised. The flaps are molded up, but the ailerons, elevator, and rudders are separate. The last two have tabs that will position them slightly off-center. These can be removed if you wish to reposition them.
The well-appointed cockpit has detailed floor and wall panels, multiple frames, optional seats with and without molded harnesses, firewall, instrument panel, and controls. Other features include well-detailed gear bays, doors, legs, and wheels, optional de Havilland and Rotol props, open or closed cockpit doors, and canopies. Lights and the gun sight are also supplied in clear plastic.
Typical of Wingnut Wings kits, the instructions include diagrams to rig control lines in the cockpit. Cartograph decals supply markings for 3 mid-production Royal Air Force Mark 1As, KLB Kiwi, flown by Alan Christopher Deere with number 54 Squadron, AZH Dirty Dick, flown by Richard Hardy from number 234 Squadron, and DWK from number 610 Squadron. So I remember the first time I looked at a Wingnut Wings kit many years ago. The initial impression I got with the instructions, the parts, and everything else was just so much quality, and it made me want to start clipping parts from the trees. I get exactly the same feeling when I look at this kit, plus it's a Spitfire, one of my favorite airplanes. I can't wait to see how this goes together.
Next, we're taking a look at a cool kit of a hot car that should get some love from scale auto enthusiasts.
That's right. Revell brings us an all-new tool 1/25th scale kit of a 1971 Mustang Boss 351.
Coming at the tail end of the muscle car era, Ford went out with a bang with this Mustang.
By putting a 330 horsepower Cleveland V8 under the hood of a new muscular body.
The sharp body moldings capture the car's appearance very well and include radiator frame and cowl details, defined outlines for doors, and chrome trim on windows. There's even headliner detail inside. The hood's characteristic ram air intakes are molded open.
Underneath sits a beautiful rendition of the 351 cubic inch power plant with the block attached to a manual transmission and separate heads, oil pan, belts and exhaust manifolds, intake manifold, coolant hoses, fan, air cleaner, and more supplied as separate parts.
The engine bay is blocked in by the multi-part radiator assembly up front, the firewall at the rear, and the sides molded into the underside. That part receives the rear leaf springs and axle. The front suspension is molded as largely a single part and gets mounted on a frame. Chrome-plated Magnum 500 wheels and soft rubber Firestone wide oval radial tires ground the pony car.
The platform-style interior has the rear seats, package shelf, and front floor mats molded in, separate sides with sharply molded cranks and armrests, 2-part front seats, center console, dash, steering wheel, and pedals. Separate front and rear panels, the sports package spoiler and air dam, as well as chrome bumpers, mirrors, gas cap, emblem, and hood locks finish the body. Thin, separate windows fit into recesses inside the body. The lights, including the dome light, are supplied in clear plastic.
Decals supply engine labels and placards, dash styles and door trim, tire sidewall titles, Utah and Illinois license plates, and Boss 351 graphics in black and argent. There's a lot of detail packed into this kit, and about the only things you'll need to add are wiring and plumbing.
All for $29.99. That is a lot of value for your modeling buck. Now, it is rare that I pick up a car kit and really gravitate towards it. This is one of those, and I really want to build this model.
It is a really cool kit. Next year marks the 60th anniversary of the Gemini space program.
An occasion MegaHobby has chosen to mark by reissuing Revell's classic 1/24 scale Gemini spacecraft kit, which originated in 1965. Now you notice that she said Gemini and I said Gemini. We've heard it pronounced both ways. What do you guys think the proper way to pronounce the name of the mid-60s NASA space program is? Gemini or Gemini? Yeah, put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. The 3-part capsule is marked with the characteristic corrugations, and the separate doors are designed to be movable to show a pair of astronauts in their seats, as well as interior detail and control panels.
There is also detail in the retro module housing and the equipment module housing. The 3 sections can be taken apart to reveal all of that. A stand is provided to display the 10-inch long finish model, and there are clear helmet faceplates and windows. Decals supply dials for the instrument panels, patches for the spacesuits, and markings and stencils for the spacecraft.
If you're interested in the space program, this re-release will be right up your alley.
And there's lots of aftermarket stuff available if you want to take it up a notch. Next up, a new version of Tamiya's 1/12 scale Honda CBR, a kit that was first released in 2020. You can see a review of it at the link in the description.
This is the 30th anniversary edition of Honda's CBR1000RR-R Fireblade SP.
Typical of Tamiya's motorcycle kits, this thing is a masterpiece of engineering.
Most of the frame is molded in 2 very nice parts, a feature matched by the suspension, wheels, and brakes. A real spring is included for the rear damper, and the soft rubber tires are gorgeous.
The detailed engine has a separate head cover, oil pan, and plugs, plumbing and exhausts, including a slide-molded muffler.
The body builds from multiple individual panels with thin edges. Clear plastic supplies the windscreen, head and tail lights, and the wheels for the stand. Masks will make painting the fairings with the lights in place easy.
Tamiya provides adhesive stickers for mirrors. Cartograph decals give all of the motorcycles colorful body graphics, instant readouts, and badging.
Tamiya's bikes have a reputation for being fun and interesting builds.
And this one looks like it sits firmly in that lane.
Casemate Publishing sent us some books that'll be useful at the workbench.
From Hellion's Asia War series, this is Rooks in Afghanistan Volume 1, covering Su-25s in the Afghanistan War from 1981 to 1985. Using dozens of photos and color profiles, the 72-page softcover describes the emergence and testing of the Soviet attack aircraft and its combat operations in Afghanistan.
From the Pen and Sword Battlecraft imprint, we have Ben Skipper's Stalingrad, Death of an Army. This modeler-oriented 64-page softcover opens with a history of the battle and closes with descriptions of key modeling subjects: the Stug 3, T-34 tank, Ju-87 Stuka, and Yak-9.
Also from Pen and Sword, here's the latest Images of War title covering the 8th SS Cavalry Division Florian Geyer. As the series implies, the focus is photos, and the softcover's 128 pages abound with images of the German unit in various parts of Eastern Europe. Finally, we have a German half-track with new parts.
It's Italeri's 1/35th scale Demag D7 with a 7.5 centimeter leIG-18 light howitzer and crew.
The half-track itself has been around since 2000 and has decent detail in the running gear, including Lincoln-length tracks. There's no engine, but the hood and radiator grills are sharply molded, and there's a decent driver's compartment, and the rear has seats, diamond plate on the floor, and the option to pose the top up or stowed.
The 7.5 centimeter gun looks straightforward with a detailed frame and spade, the short barrel, wheels, and gun shield. It includes a set of figures firing the gun. This kit has another set of figures for what appears to be a command group with an officer, radio man, and a couple of soldiers resting. Furniture and equipment finishes the grouping. Decals and color diagrams give options for half-tracks and guns on the Eastern Front, North Africa, and Italy.
By itself, there's a ton of stuff in this kit, but it could be combined with other kits for a larger scene.
Look for reviews of the Spitfire and Mustang at FineScale.com.
A great place to go for all kinds of modeling info, galleries, and even more videos.
And stop by CalmBlackHobbyStore.com for great tools from Flexifile, including brushes, sanding pads, trimmers, and more.
FineScale Modeler Weekly, brought to you by Hobby Zone USA, your source for hobby storage solutions, hard-to-find hobby tools, and aftermarket modeling needs.
So recently, we have received a number of comments and questions about sandpaper, sanding sticks, files, those things that you would use on a model to smooth areas. Now, some of these have been, a little bit like, you use sandpaper? Oh, hold your horses there, bud. Yeah, we use sandpaper, of course. How else are you gonna sand? Anyway, what I thought would be, this is a great opportunity for me to bring in some of the tools that I have at my workbench and just kind of go through them in general, not as a how-to, but just in general, to show you guys some of the stuff that I use. And I'm gonna start right here with needle files, or what's also known as jeweler's files. As you can see, jeweler's files are not particularly big, right? And they're really useful for getting into tight places, or because they're metal, they're useful for making sure that flat surfaces stay flat on small parts. A step up from the jeweler file that I use are these rifflers, right? And they're angled to help get into odd areas that aren't particularly easy to get into. They are quite a bit bigger, and they also come in a variety of shapes. But what's nice about them is that they're a little bit more aggressive, right? If I really need to get in somewhere and open a spot up, I'm able to do that with those rifflers. Another useful tool at my workbench is the tadpole. Now, what's a tadpole? Well, a tadpole is, in the case that I have here, a metal form or shape that you then wrap sandpaper around, and you use that to sand. But with the tadpoles, they come in a variety of shapes, and you can get them in metal. You commonly see them also in rubber, and they're most commonly used by woodworkers, but they're nice for getting particular contours that you're going to be looking for on your models. Which just brings me to then sandpaper in general, because yes, you do or can use sandpaper on your model. And I'm just gonna bring this up right now, because we had a couple of comments recently sent into the magazine about using sandpaper. Like, how could you use sandpaper? No one is saying go out to the hardware store and buy yourself some 60 grit, super coarse sandpaper and then rock that on your model. No. The coarsest grit that you're probably going to use on your model is 180 to 200 grit, right? That's gonna be enough to really knock down any surface that you're gonna want to eliminate. And then you're gonna work your way up from there. And you can go from, like I say, 180 to 200 all the way to 12,000, right? For those super high gloss polished finishes. So in any case, sandpaper is definitely something that you can use on your models. Which is just then going to bring me to these really cool items, which I will admit, these are not from my workbench. These are from Aaron's workbench, and he's used them quite a bit. And they do a similar job as to what the tadpoles do, except that they're just flat, so more like this one, or a more traditional sanding block that you might see made out of wood. But these are perspex, and they have various grits on both sides, and they're really useful for sanding flat surfaces and making sure that those surfaces are flat. Because, we're gonna move over here now, when you get into things like sanding sticks and sanding sponges, just as the name suggests, they're more forgiving, right? They will sort of mold or wrap around contours. When you really want something flat, this or a tadpole, that's gonna be where it's at for you. Now, as I said, sanding sponges, and I'm gonna kind of show us all of these. You're looking at these and you're probably thinking, wow, I've seen those in the cosmetics section at the store. You probably have. These right here are directly right out of the cosmetics section of the store. They're for filing nails or polishing nails. Actually, Aaron introduced these to me, and I've found them to be very useful. There's a coarse side and a fine side, reasonably inexpensive, to do just basic sanding if you need to get something done really fast. Or he and I had a conversation about this on another video a few weeks back. I used a number of these to smooth the deck of a ship. It was really useful just to get in there and be able to do some square corner work, but also really got that holy stone action where I was scraping the deck clean. In any case, you can imagine that there can be, a number of different uses for something of this size, right? And like I said, fairly inexpensive. Now these over here, like I said, you probably are looking at them and went, yeah, I've definitely seen the cosmetic section at my pharmacy. So this U-Star line, things are kind of color-coded, right? This is on this particular block, this is a soft sponge section in the center, right? And then you get your coarsest grit, which isn't particularly coarse, a little less coarse, a little finer, and then finally some polishing there. This one right here is sort of a combination idea of the tadpole and the sanding stick, right? Where you've got a wooden center there, and again, coarse, a little bit finer, and then a polishing pad. You can probably find these at the store for a reasonable price. You go this next step though, and you get to something that is more curated, more refined toward hobbyists like what we are. And that are these sanding sticks, okay? So you can find sanding sticks from Flexifile, a number of other hobby sources, and they come in a variety of grits and grades. They're usually color-coded. So for instance, this one from Flexifile here, this is a coarse grit, this one's medium, this is super fine. The fine is sort of a lighter gray. And then much like what this U-Star is, you'll see that you've got a coarser grit, a finer grit, and then finally a polishing grit here, much like what's being done here. And I have a ton of these. Why? They're just useful. They're reasonably stiff. They're really good for a number of different just general purpose sanding tasks, right? Or smoothing tasks. Finally, we have these kind of sanding pads. And what's really neat about these, and these are from Green Stuff World, is that they are color coordinated, with the coarsest grit in this series being 180, and it's this kind of tan color. And it goes from that tan up to red, right? And you can see here that it's 180, 250, 400, and 600 grit. That's getting up there, right? That's pretty fine. What's nice about these is that they are easily cut. So if you needed something more along this size, you can go ahead and cut that in half, and then you can use it. They're also designed to be both useful wet and dry, which is nice. These files don't necessarily stand up so well once they're wet. I haven't tested these, and I haven't had to. In any case, these are also available up through 2500 grit in a superfine pack as well, right? To really, 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 really smooth out any areas that you need to get sanded. Finally, these are from Flexifile as well, are these interesting sort of semi-needle files, right? They're available in 3 grits, and again, they're just one of those things where they're semi-stiff, they've got some give to them, but you can get into some tight places with them, and I have a number of trays that are full of them. I separate them out via grit, and then, it's just easy to pick one up and then sand with it. So this is just a survey of the vast array, the multitudes of filing and sanding products that are out there available to you either on the internet or at your local hobby store. Now, what I do want to say is that car modelers who are dealing with high gloss finishes, they will often go up through 12,000 grit with sanding pads like these. The absolute essentials for my workbench, if I had to choose amongst all of this stuff, I would have needle files and then either a variety of either these kind or this kind of sanding pad. Those are the basics for my workbench.
Don't forget to enter the FineScale Modeler June sweeps for your chance to win $1,000 worth of kits from the likes of Tamiya, Airfix, Revell, ICM, and Atlantis. Go to finescale.com/June sweeps to enter now.
Recently, Aaron was at Camp Hill, Pennsylvania
For the AMPS International Convention, the Armor Modeling and Preservation Society, the big armor modeling show.
I was going to ask you what AMP stood for. I was going to test you, but
No, I remember.
you got there. You snuck it in before I could get to you.
Big armor show, lots of armor on the table, nearly 700 models. And while I was there shooting photos for the magazine and the website, I also shot some video.
Let's roll it.
So, thanks to the folks at the Camp Hill Armor Modeling and Preservation Society group for welcoming me, setting me up. Great time. They did a good show. And so, yeah. And next year's show is in South Bend, Indiana.
Much closer to us.
Yes, in about the same time period. I don't know that they've set the dates yet.
Okay. Well, we will keep you posted.
That's right.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Ready?
This is your brain. This is your brain on NPRD.
Fire burning, cauldrons bubble.
What shall we do with the drunken co-host? What shall we do with the drunken co-host? There's going to be a 20-minute episode and a 30-minute blooper reel at this point in time. You can see you in the link in the description?
So Aaron's just being like a fish.
It's funny watching Aaron as he sort of sneaks around like David Attenborough. Oh, we can't. Here we see you. You can't spook Tim. Don't look at me like that. I can feel the disappointment. I can feel it. Sanding, sanded.